Welcome to another live stream repair. We've got our work cut out for ourselves today. We've got 3 different repairs. The first one is a board only, sent to us from Ireland, and they are having issues with, well, hold on. So these guys actually attempted their own repairs and ended up knocking a few of the components off. So we're going to try to rebuild that. Can't possibly be as difficult as the one that we did yesterday. So they're missing the logic board connector on the top here. And they also did their own DC offset repair. And let me check the notes again. Let's see here. So, tried to fix it by replacing the capacitors. So they were originally attempting to fix the popping and deaf parts. So they replaced those filtering capacitors, and once they got it back together, they said that it smelled burned and didn't power on since then. So I'm going to suspect maybe the fact that the logic board connector came off the board so easily, that might have something to do with the behavior they saw when they started putting this back together. I do also see, if you look at it straight on, you can see the caps are kind of bent in there. That shouldn't be a problem. I think that probably happened during shipping. So when we send this back to them, we're probably going to send it in a box just to prevent any further damage. So what we'll do, let's bring up the close-up camera and do some visual inspections around the board together. So these are where those filtering capacitors they replaced are that are responsible for DC offset. That's what they originally touched. And they also said that they accidentally hit this part over here with some heat. Where's my pointing stick? Accidentally hit these with some heat. Actually, it almost looks like the solder from that one went under there. Hard to say. Let's see if we can smell if we smell anything funny. No, I don't smell anything. So, let's do this. I'm a little curious about this. I'm a little curious about what this looks like underneath. We might just hit this with some heat, take these off and put them back on really quick just to make sure that those aren't shorting anything out under there. Then we'll move over to the area that they did for the DC offset repair. These 4 capacitors here. And we will, I did see some, like the traces right here. Looks like the solder might be doing a little bit of bridging here. So we're going to just take these caps off and redo all of this. And so once we touch this up and this up, we will flip this around and replace the logic board connector that's missing right here. And then we will throw this all together on the test bench. We will use one of my sacrificial power supplies and bricked logic boards just to see if this powers on after we do our repairs on it, because I don't want to hook up a good logic board to this and end up frying a good logic board because something else was wrong with this board. So let's jump right into this. We'll go ahead and start with taking a look at these right here. Again, it kind of looks like, and I only looked here because they mentioned to me that they had accidentally bumped these components over here. So I kind of knew to look here, but that does look a little suspicious. So we're going to, oh, that just actually popped right off with my finger. Look at that. So that definitely needs to get put back on, maybe even replaced. That's no big deal. I've got quite a few of these boards sitting around for parts that we can use. So let's start with pulling this capacitor and this diode off. We're just going to hit this with the full heat. I'm going to go ahead and get that capacitor out, the one that just popped right off. Wants to put up a fight. Here we go. Okay, let's grab a parts board here. And I'm just curious if there was ever anything right here on these small pads. But looking at another board we've got here for parts, that does not appear to be the case. These are unpopulated underneath, so we don't need to worry about that. But let's get ourselves some new parts. Actually, before we do that, let's clean up the pads on our board that we're trying to fix up here. Hit this with some flux. Get some of that junk off there. And then we can go on ahead and pull some new parts off our board. Okay. Let's bring our other board back in here. Try to put this stuff back on. Okay. Now let's get these filtering capacitors off, touch these pads up, and put them back on. Very good. We'll touch these pads up with some fresh solder. I think, so if you look right here, it looks like in between this pad and this pad, some of the solder mask for the board has come out. So I don't know if this is going to be where it ends up shorting out, but we're going to go ahead and put some new caps on here anyways, and just give this a try. Yeah, I don't know. Let's get some fresh caps on here. Let's start putting these new ones on. Okay. Finally, let's try to find ourselves a parts board that's got the logic board connector on it that we can take off. I'll show you how I do that. Here we go. So what I do with these is I get myself a little vise. And I just vise this on. I'm gonna put some flux on that. going to hit the back of this board on the other side to pull that connector off. Just gonna keep tapping that connector, and it just pops right off. Set that to the side. Take a look at our connector here. We've got all of our pads, all of our pins in there, so that's good. Let's get our new board, or our board up for repair here. Go ahead and put that in our vise. Now this is going to be the tricky part, getting our new connector on here. What we'll do actually, of course, first let's go ahead and redo the pads for this connector before we just put it on there. And what we're actually going to do, where's my solder wick? Here we go. We're going to take this old stuff off and we're going to replace it with some low melt stuff. There we go. And then we're going to get our low temp solder paste here. We're just going to goop some of that on there. And we should be able to hit that with the heat. Okay. So let's go ahead and put this new connector on here. We're going to use our, we're going to get some flux on here. I'll move you guys around real quick here. So y'all can see what's going on. And we're gonna get this ready. We're not gonna heat this up with the connector in place. We want to melt that solder first, and then drop our connector in so we don't melt the crap out of it. And so we're actually grabbing it by the locking tab there. We are not grabbing it like this. We're grabbing it from in there. Whee! We'll have that locking tab facing in. All of our pins are nice and lined up. Let's give that a visual inspection. Those all look good. Those are all good. So I think we are ready to find out if we've got this board repaired. So just to recap, this board itself was sent in to us from somebody else who had attempted to fix it themselves. They attempted to fix the death farts and the popping by replacing these 4 capacitors, and in the process they accidentally bumped some other stuff around, so we went ahead and just replaced those over here that they bumped around. We replaced their filtering capacitors after touching up the pads on there. Now, I'm skeptical, like I said earlier. There's some damage to the solder mask right here that appears to almost allow one of these pads to short with one of the caps pads. So I'm not sure if that's going to be causing problems or if that's in fact the root of their problems. Perhaps when they were replacing these capacitors and they were cleaning the pads or resoldering them, they had gone a little too aggressive and scratched through that solder mask and created a short with some solder. But we will find out. So we got those fixed up and replaced, and then we put a new logic board connector on here as well. For some reason theirs had popped off. So, well, before they sent it in to us, it had popped off. So we put a new one on there. Let's get our test parts on here. So this is their amp board. I've got my power supply that I could care less if it blows up. We're going to put a couple screws in that so when we put it down on the table it doesn't pop out, cause more problems. Now I wouldn't get too excited yet, just because our board repair yesterday, which to be honest, that repair yesterday, that was some next level stuff. I don't even know how we got that working again, but we did. Not too sure about this one, but we will see. Let's get a logic cable on here. If this works, we'll clean all the flux off of this, but there's no sense in making it look pretty if it doesn't work. And I'm feeling like a 30% chance of this working. But we will find out. We've got a bricked logic board here. This one has the blinking volume buttons. I don't want to put a good logic board on here, not knowing what else could be wrong with this amp board and potentially frying a good logic board. We've got one that's bricked here just for the sake of seeing if this thing turns on. And we will plug a subwoofer in too, just if it turns on, then we can test it for bass. We'll have to swap in a good logic board, but and then we'll get some power leads connected, and then finally we will grab our power cable and plug that into the wall. I'm actually going to put on my safety glasses before we do this, just in case we've got any catastrophic failures or explosions here. Alright, let's plug this in and cross our fingers. Oh my goodness. It powers on. I can't even right now. 2 for 2 board repairs that have been that intense, successful so far. I cannot believe myself. I'm just too excited about this. Okay, let's unplug this from power and connect a logic board that's not bricked, that's not just going to boot to volume buttons. Let's check and make sure that we've actually got sound. So we're going to grab another one of my logic boards that I've already got pre-configured. We're going to connect this up. And if this works, let me check their package. I think they sent the logic board too, because if this works, if their amp works with my logic board, then we'll want to check their logic board, of course, to see that it didn't get damaged. Because they were saying that it made some funny smells. Okay, good. It looks like they sent the power supply, their logic board, their display. So we'll be able to test all of their parts here, just to make sure. Let's reconnect this to power now with a good logic board. I cannot even right now. On a scale of 1 to 10, I just can't. Alright, that's booted up. Let's wake it up and hear if we get any bongs. We got a bonk. It bonked us. Let me get my phone here. Just make sure that it can actually play music. Yeah, that's working. Okay. Let's go power this down. Let's get their, that's their display. That's their power supply. And here's their logic board. Let's get the logic board out. Theirs. And their display. I am a fan of how this was packed. Very, very well done. Alright. I don't smell anything burnt on the display. I don't smell anything burnt on the logic board either. So, fingers crossed that the only thing that got damaged here was the amp board, and we're all done here. But let's find out. Let's get my logic board out of the way. Get their logic board and display connected. And then plug this all up into power. And shoot. That's not booting up. Do we have power draw? Yes, we do. We've got 2 to 3 watts at the wall. So let's go ahead and just for kicks, I'm not sure if it's the logic board yet. It's possible that the display was damaged and the logic board is fine here. So let's get their logic board and one of my good displays. I'm also just inspecting the ribbon cable from the logic board to the display to make sure that there's no damage on that. It looks okay. Looks okay, but we'll try a different cable after we try a different display on here. Okay. Their logic board, my display. Interesting. Are you serious? Their display is dead too? Their logic board is fine, but their display died? How? Well, that's not a problem. I've got plenty of displays I can sell to replace. But I'm more curious, what exactly died on the display then? Okay, so their logic board produces sound. That's good. How does their display not work? Oh, I bet you I can see evidence of it too. I wonder if they got in between the plastic layer and the PCB of this display. You can see there's some scratch marks underneath that. So let's this display for all intents and purposes is already done. So let's try to get this plastic off and see what kind of damage there is. Yeah. Looks pretty gnarly under there. I'm not sure if the scratches in there would cause it. I've seen worse work fine, but I've also seen less cause problems. So one more time, let's just try their display on here. And then if that still doesn't work, then we will sell them a new display. Okay, their display is back on to their logic board. And still nothing. So yeah, I'm gonna say that your display slash touch board here has probably, well, it's possible that it was taken out from the disrepair of the amp board when you tested it. It's possible that that took the display out, but it's really strange that it took your display out, but your logic board still works fine then. I'm more suspicious of the scratches under this plastic on your display here. I think it's entirely possible when you go to pry and you get in between the wrong layers here. You don't want to pry these two pieces apart. You want to pry this as a single unit. And what usually happens is people pry and pick the ambient light sensor off right here. They don't usually end up damaging the top of this PCB here enough to cause any problems. But in this case, it seems like that may have happened. Alright. Well, before we get too excited, the last thing we should test is their power supply. So they did send their power supply in. Let's go ahead, take my test supply out and put their power supply in. And we're going to have their amplifier board, their power supply, their logic board, and the replacement display that I'll sell them. We're going to test all of that together to make sure that what we send back to them is all working and they're all good to go. So, if we find my screwdriver, get our screws out for the old one. Pop that out. Put our new power supply in, or actually, excuse me, their power supply in. Make sure that's nice and secure. Let's grab a new display. Let's see here. We've got one in wonderful condition here. This one I pulled from a bricked board, or a bricked HomePod. We've got no pry marks around the edges here. Nothing underneath. Just a good, cleanly pulled display that I know works. So let's get this connected. And all right, let's check. Cool. Their power supply works. We got their amplifier board rescued and repaired. We needed to replace their display. I suspect probably physical damage from disassembly. And their logic board works. So that's all great news. We'll be able to send this back to them and they'll be able to put all this back together. Assuming they haven't damaged their ribbon cable, right? Because this is my ribbon cable. They didn't send theirs. But I don't want people ripping their ribbon cables out to send in for testing the other parts. because you could more likely than not end up damaging your ribbon cable just trying to take it out to send it to me. That's too risky. Instead, I'll have you send in the parts that we want to get diagnosed, minus that ribbon cable. If I get everything fixed up, we send the parts back to you and you still can't get it working, we find obvious damage on your logic cable here, that's not a huge deal. I can always sell and mail you a replacement logic cable here in like an envelope for really cheap shipping, only a couple dollars for that. So, right on. Let's just check for DC offset since we've got this here. And we're sitting at a cool 2 millivolts of DC across the woofer. So we are all good to go here. Let's go on ahead and disconnect this from power. Let's get all their parts set to the side and we will move on to the second repair for today. Actually, good point. Is the diode worth replacing as a precaution? What date code does it have on there? 1752K? Yeah, well, I'll replace the diode after the stream here, because I think we've got a few other people waiting to see theirs get fixed. But I will get that diode replaced for you after the stream, and you can of course check that for yourself. The date code on the diode will be significantly newer than the 1752K you've got on there. But let's see. We've got our second HomePod up from Joseph here. And this one's also going to be pretty interesting. This one, I believe, was also a prior repair attempt that they had tried on themselves. And if I recall correctly, they, let's see here. Where's my knife? We'll just use this. Let me check my notes again here really quick and see what they sent this one in for. Okay, so I believe, yeah, the main issue for them is the bass constantly cutting in and out during playback. The frequency has rendered it unusable. And I believe they've already taken this one apart and attempted to replace the capacitors that caused that, the filtering caps. And they said that they are still experiencing the problem after a few weeks. So we're going to take a look at that. Come on. Relinquish the good stuff. Make sure we don't got anything funny in there. Okay, cool. All right. So, I can tell that this one has been opened, although for someone who hasn't done probably over 100 of these by now, that's a really good, did a really good job putting that back together. You would probably pass it for one that's never been taken apart by most people. So, let's plug this in and power it up really quick. Okay. It's asking for us to set it up, so let's go on ahead and do that. We'll just let that set up for a sec here. If you needed to take a break, this will probably take a minute, so go grab some water, use the bathroom, take over a small country. Interesting. Do you hear that? There's like a high-pitched squealing coming from it. I wonder if that has anything to do with their problem. I've never heard that before. Yeah, it's still there. Oh, setup failed. Interesting. Let's try that again. And of course, the HomePod setup prompt killed the camera app on my phone here. So we're gonna have to relaunch that. Amazing foresight, Apple. Okay. Let's try to set this up one more time. Fix this camera rotation here. There we go. Will it set up or will it fail? Oh, it failed again. Interesting. Do I need to set this up with my other phone here? Let's pick let's pick outside. I don't think I've got any outside right now. I still can't believe we got that other board working. So that's awesome. I'm gonna pat myself on the back. Doodle-doo, 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 will it work, will it fail? Is it just a garbage pail? Come on. Oh, and wants my Apple ID password. Let's see if that makes it happy. It's thinking. It's still thinking. Wow, this is taking its sweet time. I guess we could cut up a subwoofer while we're waiting for this. Let's grab a blown woofer. I've got this one here, and if we push in and listen to it, it's got some nasty sounds to it. And if you look into the inspection port there, the voice coil is visually burnt. So let's grab a knife and cut this apart while we're waiting for this to set up. I'm sure this might be painful for some people, but this woofer is totally dead. This is what happens when you ignore your DC offset and you let it grow to the point that it overheats your woofer and cooks your voice coil. There we go. Let's cut those wires. And then we can pull this coil out. Or not quite yet. We got to cut the spider here. And there we go. So that is pretty gnarly. This is what it should look like, and this is what you don't want it to look like. And I can smell it from here. Whew. That is bad. So, yeah. Take care of your DC offset, kids. Brush your teeth, fix your DC offset. This is taking forever. Verification failed. That's my password. Okay, let's do this. Let's cancel all this. Let's cancel the setup and everything. Let's get their logic board out and put my logic board in here. Just so we can play some test music on this and get some behavior. Yeah, get an idea of what this is doing. Here we go. This should be pretty easy to get into because someone else has already been in here. And I can feel just by putting my tool in there that they accidentally went into the wrong layer for a second there, but they realized they were in the wrong one and corrected themselves. Let's get this display up. Just those 4 T6 screws. For 99% of the work that you'll do with HomePods, the only screwdriver you'll need is the T6. The only time you'll need a different screwdriver is the T5 Torx. There's 3 of them under the rubber foot of the bottom of the HomePod that holds the mesh to the body. So normally you don't need to mess with the mesh, like take the mesh off completely in order to do any repairs. So looking at our display here, yep, you can see that. Let's get our pick here. They did break off their ambient light sensor here. And again, this will happen when you've got your display here and you stick your pry tool in and you get in between this plastic and this PCB. You want to pull this up as a single unit. You don't want to let your pry tool get in between these layers here, because you'll end up doing that and bumping your ambient light sensor off. Now, it's not the end of the world if you break off your ambient light sensor. No, I'm not going to fix your ambient light sensor. But the thing will work pretty much just fine without it. The only difference that it will do with this ambient light sensor broken is it'll just be, whenever the display is on for whatever reason, it won't have automatic brightness. It'll just be at full brightness. Touch and everything still works. The Siri responsiveness and everything of the display, it all works. Just that ambient light sensor will affect your automatic brightness. So I won't fix that because there's just too much plastic around this display to make it really practical, and the plastic here is just so stuck down to the PCB here that it's just not really worth my time to tear these down much further to fix it's not a what's the word? You don't need this to use the thing, so not something that I really am keen on ever fixing. But okay, let's move on. Let's get their logic board out, and let's put my logic board in here. Okay, got that out of the way. Now, is the woofer in good condition? Yep, woofer feels and sounds fine. So that's good news. Let's see here. Let's put this on top of some tape here. Pull our mesh down. And I want to gain access to the subwoofer terminals so we can measure for DC offset before we get my logic board connected to this. This is going to be the easiest HomePod disassembly on this channel yet because it's already been taken apart for me. I love it. No prying, no heat, just a couple of screws, a couple of minutes, and we'll be fully inside. Watch this. There, look at that. Pried it off by hand. Okay. Let's get this woofer out. Okay. And let's just take a peek at the color of that voice coil in there. Yeah, that looks really good. You can't see it on the camera, but it doesn't smell weird, and it looks fine. And it's perfectly quiet and smooth when I push straight in. So their woofer is fine. That's good. Now that we've gotten this far, I might see what the problem is already. The resistor right here that's next to your subwoofer connector, this resistor's got some, it looks a little baked. It looks okay, but it looks like it was overheated at one point. So let's get our multimeter. Let's measure the resistance of this resistor here. And again, that's going to be this guy, this big resistor right here with the number 100 on it. So we're just going to measure the resistance of that while it's on the board. It's in my experience, it's totally fine to measure it on the board for this specific component. You'll get an accurate reading. And okay, the resistor's at 10 ohms spot on. So that resistor's actually fine. I'm just blowing smoke. Let's continue taking this apart. Let's get this up so we've got ourselves enough room. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna plug in our subwoofer. I've got a really long cable soldered to my woofer here, so it makes these tests easier. And then we'll grab my logic board, wherever I put that down. Here we go. Let's get this connected. And then we need to pull this mesh up so that we've got room to plug our power cable in here. There we go. And let's put our meter back into DC millivolts. Connect that to our woofer. And we're going to watch our meter here while we boot this up. Just check and make sure that it's actually turning on. Yep. We'll wait for this to finish booting up, and then we're going to wake it up. That'll turn the amplifier on and give us an idea of how much DC is on the woofer, if anything. Okay. 5 millivolts.
On it. Siri here. Let me know if I can help.
No. I don't know if you hear that. That high-pitched squealing. Where's my gain? Yeah, my gain's up all the way. This is Nick, and stupid spam calls. Wasting my time. Let's see. I think it's very strange that I hear a capacitor warming up, or like whining. Let's see if we can reproduce that. I'm going to unplug the power from this for a second. I'm going to get the microphone real close here so you can hopefully hear what I'm talking about. Alright, I think we've waited long enough for the caps to discharge. Let's plug it back in. It's booting up. And I'm curious if it starts to whine immediately after boot or after I wake up the amp. Nope, no whining yet, and then I'm going to wake it up. You hear that?
I don't have it.
I don't know if you can hear that, but that is bizarre. All right. What should we do? I think we should go on ahead and get this amp board out and see if we can locate where that high-pitched squealing is coming from, because I have a feeling that might be the source of our problems here. And by source of our problems, I mean the source of the customer's original complaints, which is they did the DC offset repair on their own, but after some time the base still cuts out. So I'm curious to see where that could be coming from. We've really got ourselves an arrangement of non-standard repairs in today, don't we? Or not uncommon repairs, I should say. Oh, I just noticed that your one of your screws right here wasn't all the way tightened, but I guess if you're just throwing this back together for having me taking a look, it's not too big of a deal. All right. Let's get this power supply out of the way. What are the chances that we get 2 repairs in today, both with prior repair attempts for DC offset? I think that's interesting. Coincidental. Anything funny with this power supply? Nope, it looks and smells fine. Set that to the side. Alright, all those screws for the amp are out, so we should be able to pull this up, set their shell to the side. And we can take a closer look at this amp board here. Now, nothing obvious. Okay, now the back here. I'm not 100% positive on the work here for these caps. It looks like, let's get a close-up here for you guys. All right. What does that look like to you? That looks like potential problems to me. So I think we're going to also, am I tripping, or is this capacitor at the bottom here smaller than the rest of these? I think it is. let's just go on ahead and replace all 4 of those filtering capacitors. Let's take their old ones off that they tried to replace these, but we're gonna take them off anyways. Touch up these pads, make sure that we don't have any shorts going up to any of these smaller components right above them, and of course no shorts between each other. And then we'll put a fresh set of our approved capacitors on here and see if we still hear that high-pitched whining, because that's interesting. I've never heard that whining before, and I don't know if that's a result of something going on in here or if there's another problem. So we're gonna fix this first, just so we know that this isn't a problem, and then we'll throw enough parts on this together on the bench to power this up and try to locate the where that high-pitched squealing sound is coming from on here. So let's just jump right into that. Let's turn our filter back on, grab our hot air, and just go to town. Yeah, it looks kind of like we've got cold solder joints on here, but it's hard to tell for sure. Let's hit this all up with some fresh flux. And get our iron with some fresh solder on that. There's like what is that? There's like junk in here. Yeah, what is that? Was ist das? Aha. Now, where did that come from? Did that come from this board? Is there something missing on here? I don't see where it could have possibly come from. At least nowhere nowhere around these filtering caps. That's interesting. Let's finish touching up these pads here. Just do a comparison with another amp board. Oh, I found it. I found where it's supposed to go. Are there any pads left there to put it on? No. I think that's the problem though. I believe when they were replacing their filtering capacitors, there's supposed to be, here's my poking stick, here we go. There's supposed to be a resistor here, and it's not here. If we look at another board, we can see that resistor right here, and there's no pad. There's only one pad for it here. The other pad's missing. Let's see, where does that pad go to? What type of solder do I use? I'm not super particular about my solder, but I've got this Mayim, it's got rosin core, it's that alloy. It's got a little bit of lead in it. That's all I care about, is that my solder's got a little bit of lead in it. But I'm not particular about my solder. I'm more particular about my flux. The flux is the stuff. But, yeah, so the problem here is that they have damaged one of the pads. One of the pads for a teeny tiny little component is completely gone. It should be right here, in between this pad and this capacitor. There should be another pad here, and we should have another black resistor right here. Just like we do on this side over here, there should be one on this side right here. And that's gone. That's actually what we pulled off the pulled out of the solder from one of these other filtering capacitors. It was this component was just chilling inside of it. So I'm not sure if we'll be able to fix this or not. Well, I wonder, maybe we can get away with a dirty little trick. Maybe we can get away with something here. I wonder. So I've got a board here that I've started working on removing all of the components for in an attempt to reverse engineer and possibly build some schematics for these boards. I wonder if we'll be able to find what pad the one that they ripped off is continuous with, and maybe we can just use a solder blob to bridge that to the next component that it normally connects to. If this pad that's missing on their board connects to something far somewhere else in another wonderland, then we may not be able to fix this, at least with our current skills and tools. But we can try some things. I'm curious if we grab our multimeter, put that into continuity test mode, and then we grab our depopulated board here, and we just check and see what this pad that's missing on their board would normally be connected to. Okay, cool. That's good news. So it appears that the component that normally sits on these two pads, this pad right here, connects to this pad up here. So we should be able to put our resistor back onto this pad, and then put a solder blob that connects the other end of our resistor on top of this missing pad to this guy right here, because that appears to be those appear to be connected, and that would make sense because they're lined up on the board right here, and the audio signal is traveling in this direction, going that way through this circuit. So that would make sense. Let's see what we can do with this. Now we will need to harvest that resistor. Actually, we've got it on our tweezers still right here. So maybe we can just get our other board here. Stick that down into place. Okay, so kind of like that. We're going to heat this capacitor into place, and then we're going to add some solder to bridge that the other end of that capacitor to the next one, because we're missing a pad underneath it. There we go, and you see that guy right there kind of fall into place. We're gonna let that cool down. And then, so because we've got the pad for this capacitor, the bottom pad, but the top one's missing. But that top pad's continuous with the next component up here. So we're gonna try to bridge those together with just some solder. Before I do that, I'm going to hit this with some more flux and just make sure that this guy right here is really on the board. Okay. It may look like a disaster right now, but we're getting there. And I'm going to cheat, and I'm actually going to use some of this low temp solder paste. And I'm going to ooze some of that right in between the two components right here. Might have gotten a little too much there. Okay, let's see if that bridges. Let's see if that works. I think we got them. I think we got those two bridged together. I'm gonna try to clean this up really quick. Okay, so maybe you can see better what it is exactly that we had to do here. So this component right here was missing. But it was also missing one of its pads. So we got it soldered onto the pad that it had, and then we found continuity with the next closest component, and we created a solder blob bridge to connect the other end of this component here with the next one in its series that it was again continuous with. So essentially we've just rebuilt the trace with some solder on the top of the board here. So now we just need to go back in and put some new filtering capacitors on here, and then we will check and see if, of course, that we've got no DC offset still, but also that that high-pitched whining. Let's see if that goes away just by getting this fixed up. So let's get some new filtering capacitors out here. We're going to use all brand new ones from the kit that I like, kit that I approve. I don't, you know, those generic Amazon kits or whatever, those work fine. But I just don't know really what the quality of those are, how long they will last. Okay. We got those new caps on there. let's go on ahead and throw this board together on the bench really quick. Okay, let's get some logic on here. Let's grab our power cable here. Get our subwoofer here. Connect our multimeter here. And let's plug this into power. And let's check for DC offset and see if we've still got that squealing, that weird line. All right, it's booted up. Watch our meter here when we wake it up. Okay, we've got about 1 millivolt of DC offset, so that's excellent. And I don't hear that weird squealing anymore. So I'm curious. I'm using my test power supply. I wonder if that squealing was coming from theirs. Let's find out. Let's just get this power supply disconnected really quick. Let's get my power supply out of the way. Let's plug their power supply in. All right. Reconnect this to power. It's booting up. And I still don't hear any squealing. So I think we got that all fixed up. Right on. Of course, they did mention that, if I recall correctly, they told me that the problems don't immediately show up. So I'm going to throw this one back together into the pod. We'll do some sanity checks, make sure that it's all hunky-dory with it fully reassembled. And then we'll move on to our third and final repair for today. And off stream, I'll do some extended sound testing with this HomePod to make sure that we don't have any prolonged issues. So let's get all of our parts torn off here. If you enjoy this kind of stuff and you're watching and you're not subscribed for some reason, not sure at this point why it wouldn't be, but go ahead and subscribe if you aren't. Let me know that this is the kind of stuff people like to see, and I'll do more of it. So far it seems that people really like the repairs being done live on stream. And it does seem like YouTube fixed their spam stuff. They introduced this new experimental chat filter, and I haven't had any problems with bots since then. So that's been really nice. Before we get too far, I almost forgot to replace their power diode. Just because it powers on, I do see that they still have an original power diode in here, so I'm going to go ahead and replace that. It'll only take just another minute. Almost let that sucker slide. I'm running out of diodes. Ah, I gotta order more. Okay. Now that's all fixed up. We've got everything we wanted replaced on here. Let me just take a quick macro photo of this, because this is pretty cool. Okay. I think we've captured enough of that. We can proceed with throwing this back together finally. And then we'll move on to our third and final repair today for, I believe, Jamie, with a HomePod that just has no power. So we've got ourselves, we got our work cut out for ourselves today. Let's see here. Okay. We got the amp screwed in. Let's put their power supply back in now. And get the get that power supply screwed in. If I had a nickel for every HomePod I fixed, I would have less than I do now. Because I would, oh no. I wouldn't do this for a nickel. Way too much work for a nickel. You gonna give me 2 nickels? Now we're talking. Thanks for sharing. I discovered a few months ago when mine broke down. I've been trying to find parts, but it's hard to find them here in France. I wish I was still in US to give you mine for repair. Oh, I've been back from Seattle for a year already. Oh, man. Oh, you're in France? Are you in luck? I'm pretty sure somebody had just emailed me letting me know that they offer repair services in France for HomePods. Let me pull their email up really quick and get you their contact info because I've been needing to add their stuff to my website. But we've got somebody in the UK that does repairs, and somebody just reached out to me letting me know that they do repairs in France. Here we go. Their website is, oh boy, I can't pronounce this very well. I'm gonna put it in the chat here. So here's their website, and you should be able to contact them through their website. So if you live in France and you need repairs on your HomePod done in France, check them out. I put a link to their website in the chat. And I've already had a few mailed in from France for repair, but that was before this guy hit me up. So, and they've got some blogs and some photos of their work. They look legit. So, I'm really excited. I'm not the only person out here doing this stuff. I don't care about the competition. I just want people to have options. And when the shipping costs equal, internationally equals about the same cost as it would be to just go pay Apple $250 for another one. It kind of sucks. So having international partners, heck, even local partners within the U.S., hit me up. I'll put your info on my website. We can fix all this stuff together. Oh, it means save my Mac. Huh. Good to know. This screw's putting up a fight. There we go. Okay, let's get our basket here. Pop that back down. Now when we're putting this basket back in, this basket here, unless you put new glue on it, well, even if you put new glue on it, this basket isn't doing anything for this actual sealing the pod. All the sealing's done with the gaskets and plastic rings underneath this plastic basket on the top. So don't over tighten these screws putting them in. You just need them tight enough to where this basket sits flush with the rest of the shell of the pod. If you over tighten these screws, you start to warp and pull the plastic rings and gaskets underneath out of place, and that's when you actually start causing issues with the seal. So don't over tighten these ones. Can I remember my first HomePod capacitors repair? I can. I can very, very well. And I was quite successful. It wasn't all that difficult, because by that point, by the time I found where that popping was coming from, these capacitors, and I had actually replaced these for the first time to actually figure out that this was the fix for the popping and the farting. By the time I actually got to this point, I had already essentially replaced by hand half of the components on the rest of these amp boards in an attempt to try to find and fix that popping and farting issue. I was, like I was saying, I was doing some reading. I found someone say heat makes the offset worse. So I took a heat gun around the board until I found which part of the board was most sensitive to the heat. And that was these caps. And as soon as I replaced them, the offset went away, the popping and farting went away. But the first time I replaced these capacitors, even for myself, I had already had a whole bunch of practice by that point, replacing pretty much everything else on these boards. So, yeah. I think the first issue that I was repairing for people widely was the no power issue. I wasn't yet accepting or offering popping and death fart repairs. I was only offering repairs for no power because I didn't know at the time how to fix it or what it was coming from. So I had quite a bit of practice repairing the no power issue as well, between my own pods and other people's HomePods. By the time I figured out the repair for DC offset, it was pretty much a walk in the park. It was just finding what exactly was causing the offset in the first place. That was the biggest challenge for me. And then, yeah. I don't know, and then what? Now, I do remember my first diode replacement for no power. That was an embarrassment. That was horrible. That was my I at this point, this is like probably 8 or 10 months ago. But I owned 2 HomePods that were working just fine, and I wanted more to set around the house. So I went online, and I found that I could get my hands on a bunch of these that were broken for fairly cheap. And I was wondering, well, how easy is it to actually fix these things? And I watched, I think their YouTube channel is Electronics Repair School. I watched them take apart and repair a no power HomePod, and I was like, I wonder if this is a common failure point on HomePods. So I bought myself a broken HomePod that had no power, and it took me like 2 hours. It must have taken me like 2 hours just to get the thing apart originally, and then it must have taken me another hour to get the diode off the board. I didn't have a heat gun at the time. All I had was a soldering iron. So what I ended up doing, and this was my personal pod. This was the first HomePod I had ever gotten for myself. That was broken for fixing up for myself. This wasn't for another customer. But this was before I got into all of this. As I was getting into this, how I did it was this is horrible. I took a knife, and I stabbed and I broke the backlight, that black casing on the diode. I broke it apart so that way I could take my soldering iron and just heat heat the old parts of the diode off the rest of the board, and then I was able to solder the new one on with my iron. But my first diode replacement was far more of a cluster than my first capacitor's replacement for DC offset. 2 vastly different experience levels, and what am I supposed to say here? What am I trying to say? 2 different periods of time in my life, or I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I think I know what you mean. What you I think you know what I'm trying to say. I cannot talk and fix at the same time. LMAO. There we go. Okay, let me check my email really quick and see if they knew that their display was busted. If they had broken that, if they had broken that ambient sensor, if they knowingly did it. Because, let's see. Yeah, they didn't mention anything about them busting the ambient light sensor on their display. So I'm going to presume that they didn't even notice that they did that, and that they didn't realize that they lost their ambient brightness. So I'm going to put their old, I'm going to try to get that ambient light sensor out of here. Yeah, you see that? I'm going to get that out of the way so it doesn't end up rattling around in here. And we'll get all this reconnected. Okay. Last but not least, let's get their display. Actually, before we do that, let's just sanity check. Let's plug this into some power and just make sure that, because I just have a hunch that I didn't reconnect everything, but I probably did. Oh yeah, I did. It power's on. Cool. So let's get the display stuck back on here. This is a Newacalox, Newacalox. For all I know, it's probably the same manufacturer as the Yihua, however you say that. Could be the same manufacturer. Any tips for lining up the plastic top? Why, yes. Yes, I do. So, to line this up as best as you can, what you want to do is get your plastic top here, and of course heat up the adhesive a little bit. Don't go overboard with the heat. Be real gentle with the heat. You just want to warm them up. Make that adhesive nice and sticky again. Then once you've got your parts warmed up, take your HomePod, put the minus button perpendicular away from you, and put the positive button close to you. Have them perfectly lined up like this. So that way when you're looking at it down like this, the buttons are lined up like that. And then what you want to do is get your top and set it right in between the plastic frame and the mesh, just like that, where the mesh kind of starts feeding into the frame. You can just set it right in there, and then slowly guide your plastic top down, and use the volume buttons as a sort of reference to sort of rotate this so you know that you've got it lined up right. So slowly bring it down, keep your volume buttons lined up as best as you can, and then don't push it down, just set it down, and then look at it from the top. Look at it straight down from the top, and then make any last minute adjustments that you want. Don't rotate it like this. At this point, you should have it rotated. You should have the rotation aligned. At this point, all you're doing is making sure that it's physically like that. It's not like this way or what have you. Look at it from the top down to get it as squared up as possible, and then you can push down on it. There's no real official or like built-in like purpose-built way of doing this. You're just gonna kind of have to wing it. So that's my suggestion. Heat up your parts, set the line up your buttons so that everything sits like this and you're sitting in front of it, and then set down one corner of it against the buttons. As you're lowering it down, keep your volume buttons lined up, let that fall down, and then come down from the top and do your final centering from the top before you push down and commit to that. So that's the best advice I can give for putting these top covers back on. You can get it perfect your first few tries, but it does usually take a little bit of practice and almost feeling for it to really get it perfectly squared on, unless you've got a really good eye for it and you're really patient. It will take you a minute to line that up nice. But okay, speaking of lining it up, let's plug this into power and check that, of course. I forgot this thing is factory reset. Let's see if we can try to reset it again.
Your HomePod is about to reset. Keep pressing until you hear 3 beeps.
Oh, okay, Joseph, so that is you. Nice. Well, thank you for joining the stream. I hope you've enjoyed it so far. This has been a good one. The only thing that I've been struggling with is trying to get it set up now. So let's, I'm just doing a factory reset now. I want to try to get this thing set up on my phone so that I can do some extended sound testing after the stream, and see if we manage to fix that up. I wonder if you caught our. Let me turn my gain back down. I forgot I had that cranked all the way up. I wonder if you caught our little hacky repair there that we did for yours. I thought that was interesting. But basically, so that's what we've got to deal with now. So your board somehow, so there's supposed to be 2 components here, and when I was looking at yours, this component here was completely gone. And not just that, but the solder joints, or the solder pad, the pad for one of the 2 pads for this component here was missing. It was this pad right here. Luckily, this pad right here is connected to this pad and this component right here. So what we did was we soldered this component back on to the existing pad that it still had, and then we got some solder and blobbed that in between these 2 components to connect those together, and that seems to have done the trick so far. I was noticing whenever we would power this on, you would hear this really weird like squealing, almost like a capacitor charging up. And I wonder if that had to do with this component being missing from your board. But after we did this little hack here, it's that squealing seems to have gone away. So I'm curious if that was all that was wrong with your pod, was just that missing component during your repair, or what? Let's try to set this up. Okay, I have a feeling it's probably going to set up fine now because it's not asking me for my credentials anymore. So while we're waiting for this one to finish setting up, let's go on ahead and break out our 3rd pod for repair today. And this one comes from Jamie. So let's take a look at that one here. That's right, this one just has no power. So this should be pretty straightforward repairs for us to wrap up for today. Oh, it's asking me for my Apple password. I feel like this isn't gonna work. Alright, you work at the Apple store. You're an Apple tech. Do you have any idea why this keeps asking for my password and it won't let me set your HomePod up? Do you have some sort of weird, I'm not aware of any way to lock these pods out from people being able to set them up. I can't even, I don't recall you saying that you had any setup issues either. I'm going to try to enter my password again and try to get this set up. And while that's working, let's plug this second pod into power here and just make sure that it doesn't actually power on. Yep. Nothing. Let's see. Where's my phone? HomePod setup asking for Apple ID password, unable to continue. Let's Google. Let's search Google. Let's see if you can't set up your HomePod or HomePod Mini. Try the steps below. Make sure that your iOS device is updated. Check your Wi-Fi connection. Check that 2FA is turned on. Check the Home app. Interesting. I am running the iOS 16 beta on this. I wonder if I need to try this on my iPad here. Alright, you ready for the absolutely hilarious look of setting up a HomePod with your iPad? Where are you? There we go. Is this going to work? Whew. Any moment now. Oh, it's asking me for my Apple ID password on here too. Am I entering the right password? I'm pretty sure I am. Let me double check. Yeah, that's my password. Okay. We're going to move on to the third repair. And we will try to figure out the reason why we can't set this HomePod up later. Let's get this guy here and start tearing it apart. Alright, got that off without an issue. Let's get this display. Verification failed. The action could not be completed. Try again. Huh. 301014. 301014 HomePod setup. Okay. We will research the setup error code that we're seeing on that last HomePod after the stream. For now, let's get this one fixed up. Okay, let's get this logic board out of here. Come on. There we go. Did we forget a screw in the other one? That's for the drawstring. I'll have to go back and double check that afterwards. Interesting. No screw shall be left behind. See, that's what I thought. Yeah, I thought it was the iOS 16 beta on my phone, but it's not. I tried setting it up on my iPad. I tried my iPhone 6S. Neither of those are on any sort of beta. And both of those generally don't give me problems ever setting up HomePods. And neither has the beta. I don't know what's going on there. Yeah, that's really weird. the error code I got, if you were trying to Google it, 301014 was the error code that I got. And I know that I'm entering my password correctly. But I also don't usually see the password prompt when I set up HomePods. Okay, let's get these 9 screws out of this basket here, and then we can pry this basket off. Having an iOS beta device linked to your home account might cause issues. Okay. Yes, that would make sense because both my iPad and my iPhone are in the same home and they both have the same account linked to it. So okay, we got all those screws taken out there. If that's the case, then I've got this iPhone 6S here that's got a completely separate Apple ID, completely different home. We can try to set that one up on here, but I have a feeling it's going to give me the same error again. Let's go ahead and try that. I've still got that other HomePod plugged in. I'm gonna run through the setup on here while we're fixing this one. Let's set it in the home theater, I guess. Okay, we'll let that try to set up while we keep tearing this one apart. This one's coming apart relatively easy. Okay, I think we got that up enough to pry by hand. Oh, see? Look, it's asking for my Apple password on this one too. What's my password for... Okay. Let's try this again. I know what my password is. I've reset it. This is a phone that's unassociated with any of the other, any betas or Apple IDs with betas. This is just all by itself. Just for testing stuff. Oh, the disassembly is my favorite part. Absolutely my favorite part. Look at that. Easy peasy. Easy peasy. Let's get this subwoofer taken out now. Okay, now it's asking for my password. I know what it is this time, so I'm going to enter that. Alright, let's just inspect their woofer real quick. Smells good. Feels and sounds good. Got a good woofer. That's good. Let's get these plastic rings out of the way. Okay. Get this pulled up and out of the way. Very good. Let's get that out of the way. Let's get our power supply unplugged. Unscrew that power supply. How many have I disassembled since the first one? Are you talking about since the first repair this morning or the first HomePod repair I've ever done? Because we're only on, technically we've only taken apart 2 today. The first one was just the boards that they sent in, already taken apart. If you're talking about, since I've ever started fixing HomePods, it's got to be at least 100 at this point. I haven't kept track. Let's go ahead and check that our power supply is still good here. Yep, power supply fuse is still good. So we've still got errors on our isolated phone trying to set up that last repair. This action could not be completed. Try again. Alright, I guess I'll try again. I know this is my password though. And yeah, so I only started keeping the old diodes that I've pulled off customer boards, like probably halfway through when I started. So about 8 months ago, I think I started fixing for others, and about 6-7-ish months ago is only when I started actually keeping the old parts. But if this gives you any idea of how many that have come in just for no power alone, that's how many just for no power repairs. And then these are all capacitors from DC offset repair. And then I've got so many more capacitors that I've got set aside for doing some experiments at some point. I'm only guessing it's got to be at least 100 at this point, because if I get about 5 to 7 a week, well, actually I get about 5 to 10 a week, and I've been doing this for 6 to 8 months. I think around. I'm kind of fudging the numbers because I can't remember exactly, but you can do the math. Verification failed. The action cannot be completed. Try again. Huh. And then it gives the same error code if I cancel that. I have no idea why that HomePod won't let me set up. We will have to explore that further after the stream. But our immediate focus right now is now on this board that's got no power. And I bet you if we go up close here and we look for our power diode, (1748K), the devil's diode. Let's pull that off and replace it. Thank you, much appreciated. Okay. All right, old one off. We've got 2 more of these guys left, and then we gotta buy more. I gotta get more now. Yeah, just enough to fix yours, and then we need more. I'll probably have to overnight some more for probably some more that'll come in tomorrow. I'm bad at managing my stock. Okay. Actually, before we forget, let's go ahead and grab your board here. Let's replace the diode on yours, Nick, before we forget. Looks like we bumped that little cap here. We'll just put some solder or some flux on that and flow that back into place. No big deal. There we go. We'll grab our last diode from our stock here. Yep, 1752, you're correct. I mean, you probably saw it on the video by now, but... That's actually, you witnessed the first time I have, this may surprise you, I have literally never bumped any of this stuff around before. I've never bumped that, or this little capacitor, or these little guys up here. I've never bumped any of that around before, even on accident. You witnessed the first time I had ever done that. And I am embarrassed. I think I'll just quit after this one. Very nice. Okay, so we got Nick's diode replaced. That gave Jamie's board enough time to cool down and throw on our test bench, just to make sure that we've got no nothing else to fix. You know, of course we want to make sure that our no power repair works, but that they don't have any DC offset now that we've got this thing to power on. A lot of people don't notice the popping issues, and then their HomePod stops powering on, and that's the point where they send it in to me for repair, and then I get it powered on, and lo and behold, they've also got DC offset popping, causing death farts and what have you. So always good to check for everything while we've got it. Well, let me switch up my cameras here. There we go. Yeah, I'm gonna run to the store after this. This was intense. Okay, we've got our power going to this. Let's get our multimeter connected to that woofer. Put that into DC mode, of course. And see what we've got. Does it power on? Does it have any DC offset? Woohoo! The power's on. Let's watch our meter now. After this boots up, we'll check for our offset. Alright, it's booted. Let's wake it up. Ooh, boy. Oh boy. That's 200 millivolt scale, and it's past that, so we're going to jump up to the 2 volt DC scale. And we've got 300... Whoa! Whoa! No, 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 no. No, 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 no. That's scary. That's a gnarly amount of DC offset. That needs to get fixed. And see, aren't you glad we checked? We could have just fixed this for no power, seen it power on, heard it play music for a few minutes and called it good. But no. We want to be thorough. We want to catch them all. Because I don't want to pay for the shipping to have it sent back to me, because a different issue comes up and the customer thinks that it was our repairs. Usually it's not. But that also doesn't mean it's not our fault. Not necessarily our fault either, but just our lack of due diligence. So, let's bring that close up back here. And let's get those filtering capacitors replaced. Let's get some new ones out. We're going to need to order some new filtering caps here soon too. I might as well just go in and do the whole order at once. Excuse me. That is a hunger burp. That is what I call a hunger burp. That is a burp produced purely from hunger. Oh, I almost forgot to redo the pads on here. Getting ahead of myself. Muy bien. Now we can put these new ones on here. Bah. Okay. Got those put on there. If we take a look from the side at our joints, they're nice and they flow nice and smooth into the caps. They don't stick out. It doesn't look like the solder for the board is separate from the solder on the cap. It's like a nice solid unit. That's exactly what we want. And we can clearly see no shorts. It's all nice and lined up. Okay. One last time, let's throw this together on the bench. Verify that we've got no problems present anymore. No more DC offset. Yeah, I saw that look. You gave me the look. That eye contact. Yeah, me too. This is the last one. I should have like 15 minutes left and then we're done. Think about what you want. Hey, where'd you go? Think about what you want for food.
I'm not feeling picky.
Yeah, you want Chipotle? Looks like somebody that's turning around in our driveway. I'm gonna start charging a toll for using my driveway as a turnaround. You're putting wear and tear on my private property. This isn't funny, this is serious. This is property that I don't own that I'm going to start taxing people to use. Okay, we've got everything put back together on the test bench. We know that our no power issue is fixed. We just want to make sure that we've got no more DC offset here that will slowly cook their woofer and give them all sorts of other problems. Alright, powering on. When I tried to solder the contacts for the filtering caps, solder wouldn't stick and just blobbed. Bad solder or wrong type of flux. I used Chip Quick SMD 291NL. I'm not familiar with SMD 291NL. Oh, that's this stuff. Oh, dude. Yeah, this is my least favorite flux I've ever used. I've found, I don't know if I'm using this stuff wrong, but this stuff, it sucks. I find that I can't get good clean solder joints with this more often than not. Maybe there's a proper application for this and I'm just using it wrong. Honestly, that's most likely because they wouldn't make this. You wouldn't expect them to make this and it just not be useful for anything. This stuff, this is my recommendation. This seems to work pretty well all around for me no matter what I've been using it on. NC191. Smooth flow, no clean tack flux. This is the stuff. This is freaking magic. I love this stuff. I accidentally bought a tube of this SMD 291NL one time to replace this stuff, and I've had this tube since I started doing repairs, and I've just never used it because it sucks that bad. Okay. How much offset do we got? How much offset do we got? We've got, we're going to let that settle for a sec here. About 4 millivolts, 3. That is perfect. That is just an awesome result. That is what we want to see. So we can power this down now. Take our test parts off of this and start fully reassembling this, and we'll be done for the day. Gonna go get some food, fix up, once I eat, I've got to take a look at this Ethereum miner that one of my friends dropped off. It was mining fine for a while and then suddenly it stopped booting up. Yeah, I know people are still Ethereum mining. The guy's made he's made a lot of money off this now. I think his returns have been at least I can't give any specific numbers. I probably shouldn't. But I mean, he could probably buy a house with the money he's made off of the Ethereum mining. In today's economy, too. Yeah, I would probably keep the SMD 291 NL around just for like applications where I just really don't care too much and I just need some sort of flux to get the solder to flow. I'll probably stick it in the garage and use it for like when I'm working on automotive wiring or something. It just does not work. Which, ironic, it's in the model number SMD, but it just does not work very well for me with SMD components. Maybe I'm using too much heat. Who knows? Do you know? Because I don't know. Google probably knows. I'm going to search Google, why does SMD 291 NL suck? And it's probably going to come up with some Reddit thread. Or EV blog forums or whatever. Telling me that I'm the dumbass using it wrong. And that's probably right. They're probably right. Alright, everybody give it up for the 10th Gen i7 streaming PC being unable to keep up. Give him a round of applause. Give him some motivation here. We're almost done. I just need this thing to continue working just long enough for me to put this together, and then it can let out the magic smoke. I will build another computer to stream with if I have to. Two more screws for the amp board here. Now we can get the power supply in. Oh, before we forget, let's get this logic cable reconnected. Very good. Get this power supply in here. If it wants to. There we go. get the subwoofer here. Plop that back into place. Very good. I originally tried with my normal Apple ID that's on my iPhone and my iPad and all my other HomePods in my home and such. I tried with that one first, and then when that didn't work on my iPhone 12 or my iPad 12, I broke out my old iPhone 6S on like iOS 12 with a whole different Apple ID that's got no association with any of my other stuff. And I tried it on that iPhone 6, and it was having the same issue. So I did try setting it up with two completely different Apple IDs and saw the same issue across different OSs, different phones, different Apple IDs. The only thing left that I need to try is just setting up a hotspot on my phone and seeing if it'll set up connected to that kind of Wi-Fi. Because I wonder if there may be something, some recent development going on here with my network. I doubt it's my network, but I can't rule it out completely without doing proper testing, you know. You know, I will create a whole new Apple ID though. I'll create another Apple ID on another test phone, just to see if maybe perhaps there is still something stuck on even that second iPhone that I already have a different Apple ID on. I wonder if there's something stuck on both of them. So we'll try a third Apple ID just for kicks on a mobile hotspot, and see if that works. But I gotta do all that after the stream because I need to wrap this up and go get some food. Would be curious to see if the same account has setup issues on other HomePods. Also, double check that the latest terms and conditions have been accepted for iTunes and iCloud. Yeah, I can check those. We'll factory reset this one when we get it back together, and just see if we can set it up. Yeah, it'd be weird if the iOS beta on my iPhone like threw everything on my home network out of whack as far as setting up new HomePods. I also have a HomePod on the OS 16 beta too, so that could also be causing issues on my network. So I'll definitely try like a hotspot and a third Apple ID on an untainted iPhone. Okay, let's get this top back on. Want to make sure we don't have any adhesive stuck underneath those volume buttons here, because that will make the lighting underneath them look a little uneven. There we go. Then we're going to take some heat. Hit both of these parts with a little bit of heat just to get that adhesive nice and sticky. And then we've got those volume buttons lined up straight up against us. We're going to take the edge of this and just slide it right in there. Use that as sort of a basic guide as we lower this down, and use the volume buttons as a sort of reference for lining things up. Then we'll come down from the top. Make sure it's nice and happy. Then we can push down on that and commit. All right. We can now plug this into some power. Get it factory reset.
Your HomePod is about to reset. Keep pressing until you hear 3 beeps.
All right, that's now resetting. right, let's see. What is the verdict? Is that setup issue exclusive to that HomePod? Let's go home theater. Transfer settings. And we'll let that try to set up. I was able to sign into apple.com without any new terms and conditions. I don't know if there's anywhere else I'm supposed to check for that. It's set up. That's weird. So there must be something going on with that HomePod specifically. I'll have to do some more messing around with that after I get some food and whatnot. But this one's set up fine. I'm trying to get it to bring up the play controls here. It can always be a little bit finicky while you do it immediately after setting it up.
You'll need to update your Apple Music subscription to allow...
Alright, volume buttons are lit up nice and even. That's good. We'll go ahead and get this one factory reset cleaned up. And we've got... Well, yeah, okay, cool. That works. We got all three fixed up today, save for getting this that second one actually set up. I'm convinced almost it's an environment issue on my end, but I'll be sure that I can actually set that up before we send it back. I need to get it set up so that way I can do some extended sound testing on it. But we will go ahead and, for the sake of the stream, we're going to call all three of these pods fixed up. I hope you guys enjoyed this. How long have we been going now? Almost 4 hours. Hope you enjoyed these repairs. If you have any questions about what you saw us do today, feel free to drop it in the comments or shoot me an email. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll check you guys out in the next live stream repair. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.